Welcome back. You are listening to Nate the Hate on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, as we are rapidly approaching 25,000 subscribers. And once we hit 25,000 subscribers, if it is achieved before the end of August, MVG and myself will host a live stream with game giveaways as a thank you to the community whom have supported us for 4+ years and have grown the channel to a reach we never anticipated. And with that, this episode is dedicated to the Zelda Sensei, whom generously donated $100 to support the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel, we have a Streamlabs link in the description below. Donate any dollar amount. Ask a question. We will answer it at the end of the episode. Donate $100 or more, and we will dedicate the episode to you. And today's episode, once again, is dedicated to the Zelda Sensei. And I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Modern Vintage Gamer.
Hello, Nate. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on as always. And everyone, get on that subscription. Click that sub button. Get us to 25K. We've got some good things planned.
We definitely do. And for today's episode, we have a special guest joining us. You know him as Newman or as Shinobi602 on Reset Era and Twitter. Welcome, Shinobi. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, and really excited to talk PlayStation with you guys.
I have to ask, Shinobi, before we get serious, tell me about the Newman character, your avatar. How did that all come about? Are you just a fan of Seinfeld and Newman, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, I've been asked that a lot. Honestly, it really it's nothing exciting. I am just a huge fan of Newman on Seinfeld. I love Seinfeld. I've watched it several times over, and he just represents chaos in that show. Chaos, and he's just a devious character, and he's always gets under everybody's skin. I'm not like that in real life, but I'm attracted to that kind of character. So yeah, I'm like, you know what? This will be my face online.
Awesome. So. Fantastic. I will say that Newman is my favorite character on Seinfeld.
Yeah, it's hard not to love him, man. Come on. Right.
Yeah. I mean, he does have a soul of a poet, yet he embraces, as you said, so much chaos. And he's always there just to ruin Jerry's day.
Exactly.
You got to love him for it.
Yeah, and he's just a poor old, postal worker, and I always root for the underdog. So, yeah.
Yes, today's episode is about Sony and the PlayStation, because a lot has happened to the PlayStation 5, not only in 2024, but really since the start of this generation, dating back to November of 2020. And PlayStation fans have had a lot to celebrate, but they've also had moments of great tribulation, as Sony has made some questionable decisions with various things, be it PlayStation Plus getting a price increase, or how they have handled PlayStation Network with games like Helldivers 2 on PC, which led to a huge backlash, and eventually it was rectified. But we do see Sony employing PSN on more of their upcoming PC games. But where I want to start today's episode is talking about Sony's first-party output, dating back to really the launch of the system. I think we would all agree that when you look at Sony in 2020 and 2021 with first-party output, they were in a very strong state. They launched the PlayStation 5 with Spider-Man Miles Morales, a Spider-Man 1 remaster. We had Demon's Souls. Soon after, we had Returnal. We had a brand new Ratchet & Clank game. And over the years, you could make an argument that Sony's first-party output began to dip, and we saw less ground-up projects and more of a pivot to some ports, where we saw Ghost of Tsushima getting native PlayStation 5 release. We also saw Death Stranding. We saw a remake of The Last of Us Part 1. We saw a PlayStation 5 port of The Last of Us Part 2. And there was definitely a lot of conversation, especially in 2022 and 2023, that we were all waiting for the next big Sony game. And we did get Spider-Man 2 last year, and we had God of War Ragnarok the year before that. But when we look at Sony's first-party output to this point of the generation, it kind of feels as though we are just in a constant waiting period. And I'm curious if both of you will agree with that. And I will start with Shinobi on that. Do you think this generation has been a little slow to the uptick, or has Sony kind of been going at their usual pace up to this point?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think just from off the bat, I think I might be the more positive voice on this episode. But I think so. Personally, I think if you look at the games they put out these last couple of years and go through them, I do believe it is a compelling lineup in my opinion. If you just go down the list, Horizon Forbidden West, you had Gran Turismo 7, God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man 2. Last of Us Part 1 remake, which I love Last of Us personally. I love that IP, so I was there day one. I love that. It's a really great quality remake. I'm playing through Stellar Blade right now and enjoying that too. Really cool action game. I know it's not a first party team, but Sony forked out the budget and published it, so I guess I'd throw it in there too. Of course, there's Helldivers 2, which was a juggernaut and a phenomenon for a while there. Obviously, like a lot of live service games, the player base is definitely shrunken down, but it's still pretty sizable. I played it for a while and then just got hooked for a couple months, and I still hop in for some matches, but I think I'm definitely gonna come back in there when the new content update comes out pretty soon. That game will most likely be in the top 5, if not top 3 selling games this year, I'm sure. So I'm sure Sony's really happy with it. I'm really excited for Astrobot pretty soon in September. I think that looks phenomenal. It's exactly the step up in budget that I was hoping for that little guy. So that's exciting. It's probably one of the most exciting things Sony's done in a while, in my opinion. It just feels really fresh, really new. Lego Horizon also looks great. I wouldn't really consider myself a big Lego guy, but I don't know. This one kind of hooked me, so I think that might be a day one buy. And all that's on top of a bunch of really good PC ports, like you just said, Nate. The Last of Us wasn't great, but at least it's gotten patched up a lot, and I hear it's pretty good now. I haven't tried the PC port, but Ratchet and Clank, Returnal, Spider-Man. You got God of War Ragnarok coming out in September on PC, so I think Sony's making decent inroads on PC, and I'd consider Nixxes to be one of their most valuable studios at this point. To be honest, just a really super talented team. So personally, overall, I like if I consider from launch until now. I'm personally pretty happy with the last several years. I think there's definitely, though, room for a better cadence of releases. Like last year was mostly dry up until the fall, when you just had Spider-Man 2. But I look at these things in context, like when you think about where a lot of the teams are in their production schedules. A lot of their teams, ship big titles in 2020 and 2021. So it makes sense that that next wave needs a little more time, and I think that will come starting next year probably.
Yeah, I think part of the issue, or at least what led to a lot of the conversation of there being a lull, is that we did see an extended cross-generation period for this current generation, where a lot of Sony's first-party games did release on PlayStation 4, like Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7, God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man Miles Morales. So when we were finally getting that trickle of exclusive releases with Demon Souls and Ratchet and Clank and Returnal, when Returnal is one of my favorite games for this generation, one of my top games of the generation.
Yeah, agreed.
It just felt as though that PS4 generation was being kind of prolonged, and that took away a bit of those PlayStation 5 releases, at least in the terms of a social media discussion, where people were saying there's little incentive to buy a PlayStation 5 if you could still play the majority of these games on your PS4, though naturally you're going to have that hardcore fan who wants to play the games the best way possible, and that's only on the PlayStation 5. So even though the games were on PS4, I'd say there was a significant percentage of individuals who would ignore those PlayStation 4 versions strictly because no one, you weren't playing that version to begin with. You were playing it on the PlayStation 5. Yeah. But as you said, 2023, it was a very dry year up until we got the release of Spider-Man 2, which reviewed exceptionally well, sold huge numbers. Yeah. And now, as we're in 2024 and we're approaching Astrobot coming out in September, it does feel as though Sony is going to begin that upswing where we're going to get, hopefully, a better flow of first party output and exclusive releases. Because right now in 2024, up to this recording, which is the end of July, beginning of August, we really haven't had much in terms of Sony output. We've had partnerships and timed exclusives, be it titles like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Stellar Blade, which you mentioned, Rise of the Ronin, and later this year, we're going to have titles like Silent Hill 2, and Sony will have other titles coming out this year. We have Concord, which doesn't appear it's going to launch all that strong and may be forgotten before the end of the year. We have the Until Dawn remake or remaster coming later this year, a fantastic PlayStation 4 game. And we don't know much about their or their 2025 lineup for PlayStation 5 at this point, because Sony's been very reluctant in detailing their future plans. And I'll go to MVG to start this. Are you surprised at Sony's reluctance in detailing more of their future plans in comparison to previous years, where typically Sony is a little more transparent of what's coming out in the next 6 to 12 months? Whereas this year they had the PlayStation State of Play in late May, early June, and we didn't get really a look at what's coming out in the future. And right now there is the rumor and anticipation that maybe Sony will have a PlayStation showcase around September and gives us a look at that future forecast and outlook of what they have coming from their first party studios. Because as Shinobi made reference to, a lot of these studios put out games back in 2019 and 2020. So they should be right around that time where they're either nearing release or are ready to announce their games and ideally release them sometime in the next 12 to 24 months.
To answer your question, I'm really not that surprised, I would say, at the lack of, we'll just use the phrase communication as to what's happening beyond this year with PlayStation. Look, Shinobi brought up some really good points earlier in that it's not that they haven't been, they've been quiet. They've been quite busy, Sony. They've done a lot of different things, especially they've kind of spread things around a lot, with the live service stuff. The PC ports is something that, I don't know, it's very easy just to kind of overlook that stuff if you're not someone that's really invested in the PC space, because you can just kind of just hand wave it and say, well, that's just another PC version. It's not really a big deal. But I mean, every release is a big deal these days, right? So I feel like they've done a lot of the scaffolding type stuff this year, just to, I'm not saying to kind of reemerge as the number one, because they are number one, right? But like, I feel like they have to be, in a building phase right now where they are, ready to mount something for next year and for the rest of the generation. And I think really it's just a matter of, they're not quite ready yet. I feel like, they're just not quite there to that point where they can start to make these announcements. But look, it is a little bit surprising that, they've been pretty quiet, for some of this year. But I do also think that we will start to see, more come out of the Sony camp, going into Q3 of this year and beyond. I would expect to see that.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, like, it also kind of, if you look at how they've kind of revealed and announced things this gen compared to like prior gens, PS4 stuff, where they announced things like Days Gone and Spider-Man and God of War and stuff. I mean, years before they came out, and Ghost of Tsushima as well. I feel like it's kind of similar to how Xbox has been operating this gen. Like, look how Xbox has rolled out reveals, announced their games. The fans there have been kind of seeing those same games for years now, and kind of it's kind of just been like stringing you along a little bit. It's like, all right, finally, when's this going to come out? When's this going to come out? So it does. I've seen it appear. From my understanding, is internally that it's kind of been a shift as well to kind of keeping things close to the chest until they're really ready, until these for these projects to be revealed to the world, and they're relatively closer to release. I mean, you saw like Helldivers 2. That was kind of just like a 8-9 month time span of just kind of, I think it was about that long. Announcing it and revealing it and just kind of launch. So I think that might work better for them. I think regardless, whoever's interested in the brand, whoever wants to buy a PlayStation, I don't know if you really need like this 1, 2, 3 year long marketing campaign anymore, to be honest. I mean, PlayStation is such a powerful brand name that they can just, I mean, they could reveal Ghost of Tsushima 2 and that, have it come out a few months later, and it's going to sell just as many copies as it does if they announce it, a year ahead of time or something, So like, I think they've just kind of gotten into a groove where they're like the de facto, console manufacturer, this gen, and just, everyone's on board PS5, and just they're in a comfortable position where they're not in a rush to announce things, to reveal things, and whenever they feel the time is right, that's what they'll do. So I don't know. I'm okay with that. I want to know, like, I would love to know and see what all the teams are working on for sure. Don't get me wrong, as soon as possible. But they're all heads down. I'm sure they're all really busy, and they're all cooking up some good stuff. And whenever they're ready, they'll show us. So
what do you think, Nate, about the question? Like, do you think that there is a concern in the Sony camp, things are slowing down potentially, or do you think it's just really more a case of it's business as usual, but really it's just a matter of waiting for the right time?
And it does feel as though it is a conscious decision by them to limit the marketing cycles of these games, because this year we had Astro Bot get announced just a couple of months ago, and that turnaround time is in the area of 4 months. And that's exceptionally quick for Sony in comparison to previous generations. As Shinobi mentioned, it actually feels very similar to a practice that we would see from Nintendo. And when you look at how Sony has operated this generation, it feels as though they are taking a little more cue from Nintendo. And I would extend that even beyond their marketing, but also how they have approached their software releases. Because if you go back to the PlayStation 4, you saw a lot of people who were willing to wait on first-party games. They were waiting those 3 to 6 months because Sony would always give a price drop, a fairly significant price drop within those first 6 months. This generation, with the move to $70, Sony has been far more reluctant to give such steep price drops to their games within that first 12 months. Mm-hmm. There are exceptions to this. Some games would see price drops if they weren't, received all that well. Mm-hmm. But Sony is recognizing that their brands and their releases do have value in the long term. And when it comes to their marketing, when you look at the start of the generation, they were definitely more aggressive, more similar to what we've seen from Microsoft of, we're going to give you a roadmap. Because you have to generate hype. You have to sell the system on promise in that first 12 to 18 months. And I think currently there's only 1 or 2 long-term projects that we have heard about that have not seen, again, from their original announcement or reveal. And one of them is Insomniac's Wolverine, which was announced in conjunction with Spider-Man 2. And the other is Bluepoint, where they came out very soon after Demon's Souls came out, saying our next project is an original concept.
Original content is what they said.
Yes, original content. Oh. And, we've gotten no update regarding that. But outside of those 2 examples, everything else Sony is playing close to the chest, and it feels as though they're just holding their cards until the right time. Oh. And to fans, I think this is a little disappointing, especially when you had, was it last year or the year before, you had all the rumors, you had all the hype going into the PlayStation showcase that they were beginning their phase 2 planning. And we got a showcase that was games as a service. We saw Concord, we saw Jade Raymond's game, and everyone walked away from that showcase saying, oof, what was that? Yeah. That's not what we wanted, because people were hoping we were going to get a new look at what Bluepoint is up to, or
Sucker Punch.
What are we getting from Sucker Punch? Are we going to see Ghost of Tsushima 2? What's Sony been doing? what is Corey up to at Sony Santa Monica? So many of these teams that haven't delivered anything this generation, or that we're just waiting for their next thing. So Sony they definitely made this a conscious choice. And as you said, MVG, they're winning the generation. They are in first place. There is no sense of urgency for them to have to be a strong competitor against Microsoft because the Xbox is struggling. Sony can come out, do minimal marketing in terms of announcement to release, and still sell hardware and sell huge amounts of software. And that's what they're doing now. As a fan, it disappoints me a little bit because, as Shinobi said, I want to see these projects. I want to see what all these teams are up to. I want to get hyped on what I'm going to be playing this time next year, or what I can look forward to in 2026, versus now sitting in the dark. But on that same token, I have games coming out in the next few months that I'm already eagerly anticipating, like Astrobot. So by not focusing too much on the long term, Sony is allowing you to get hype for what's in the immediate.
Yeah,
I agree, Nate. I think getting the balance right between when you showcase your next game, that is a game that's probably taken, at least 5 years to develop, is almost an art form. Because if you go too early, then people start asking questions. What's happening with this game? We haven't heard about it for years. Is it delayed? Is it in development hell? There's all these kind of things associated with, if you don't hear about something for a while, people start asking questions about it. Most of the time, it's just BS. Like, people don't really know what's happening at all. They're just making, their own speculations. But, on the flip side, do you kind of, go too late almost? How long do you have to wait? And I agree. I think it's better to kind of wait until things are kind of starting to come out of the oven almost. You're in a situation where you're at the home stretch of development. You've probably working on a release candidate or getting close to a release candidate, that you're thinking that this could be the game. And that's when you kind of should start. I think Sony and Xbox as well, not just Sony, both of them have been in trouble in the past for showing things off way too early. I remember, Xbox has been criticized for showing games that weren't coming out for X number of years. And I'm not talking about this showcase. This one was a lot better. But in previous years, they showed us things that, some things still haven't come out yet, like State of Decay, for example, right?
Everwild.
Everwild. I mean, so I think Sony is doing the right thing here by basically just sitting and waiting. Again, we said they're the market leader. There's always urgency. Even if you are the market leader, this is the video game industry. And, if you kind of sit back and relax too much, someone's going to, jump all over you and try to take your spot, right? So I don't think they're sitting back and they're just kind of in cruise control. I think they are still being very cautious about what they're doing. But I also feel like, this is really just a result of they're just waiting for the right time to unveil some stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, Nate, like it's disappointing to us, but it's disappointing until it's not, right? So like, Sony could just, in September up and, I'm not predicting anything. I'm just theoretically, if they have some showcase in September, they could just slam down, here's Ghost of Tsushima 2, here's what Santa Monica's working on, here's what, and they're out next year or something. And then people who've been disappointed for, X amount of years now, what's this team working on? Where's this game? All that's gone, it's just hype from then on. So like, I don't know if there is kind of like a too late, at least, for Sony this gen. Because no matter what, if Naughty Dog comes out and shows their new project in a couple months, everyone's going to forget about, they canceled that live service, Last of Us game. Last of Us, part 1 port was the PC port was kind of poor. Like, they're going to forget all that's going to go out the window. So like, I think Sony understands this. They know this now. And you can look at something like Metro Prime 4, for example, that there was a lot of issues with that. The original concept got canned, and Nintendo took it back, Retro took it back, and then people were just waiting for years and years in complete silence. And a lot of people had just given up. I think it's fair to say. And then boom, just last month, like, hey, it's coming out next year. and here it is, and I'm like, right, that's damn, everyone's back on board, so like it's just nowadays in this current marketing, how marketing works in contemporary times. It's just the internet is so fast and things, and people are always on social media. Like you don't need that much time to hype people up and get them on board, get pre-orders in, and just get everyone excited. So I think that Sony, that's how Sony operates now, for better or worse. So.
See, you bring up an interesting point with Metroid Prime 4 and MVG with Microsoft. Why do you think there is such a stark contrast between the three companies when it comes to announcements from a couple of years back and then falling silent? Because when we look at Metroid Prime 4 as the example, Nintendo fans were generally we'll get an update when we get the update, let retro cook. Yeah. When it comes from Sony, we're kind of arguing in a similar case there. When it comes to Microsoft fans in all forms of social media, be it forums, Reddit, Twitter, YouTube, there's this constant sense of dread. They're always saying, oh, is this game okay? Is it in turmoil? What's going on with the development? Is it in development hell? Has it been canceled internally? Do you think it's because Xbox has just struggled so much this generation? We've had studios be closed, which Sony has as well. But Microsoft just feels as though they're constantly in a state of disarray and the foundation under their feet is broken. So we don't have that confidence that we have from Nintendo and Sony in terms of first-party output. Do you think that is what is the contrast in terms of conversation of when there is a delay in communication regarding a project announced 24 months ago?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just chime in real quick, Vintage. I think at least in specifically like in terms of Microsoft, I think they basically kind of laid out their whole hand early because it was pretty much out of necessity, in my opinion. Coming off the Xbox One generation, like they really needed to get people on board early on, or at least they wanted to. They're trying to, because they were down bad. After they lost that generation handily against PS4. So it makes sense. It made sense at the time where they're like, hey, we got all these first party teams. Look at these all badass projects we got going on. You'll want an Xbox for these, so that was, I could see them taking that kind of that line of thinking and approach and stuff. So it made sense for them. It's just unfortunate that COVID happened, and then development hell, who knows what else is going on. So it's just taking so long. But Sony and Nintendo were not, they were on the up and up coming out of last generation. So they weren't in the same position. So I don't know if you agree with me, Vintage, but that was my assessment, at least.
No, I do agree. And I also want to say that, like, I feel like each of these companies, they kind of handle pressure differently, Nate. With Xbox, when they announce delays and things like that, or lesser or bad news, I guess. They have their own style about it. Nintendo does as well. I mean, I think obviously the announcement of Metroid Prime 4 was very regrettable for them. They probably shouldn't have done that. I still don't really know the reasoning why they initially announced it. Maybe it was just really just to get people excited about the Switch, which makes total sense at the time. That they're throwing their full weight of their first party partners directly into the Switch with some really big games and stuff like that. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but look, ultimately, I think each company has their own way of kind of handling those types of things. And I'd like to think that they've learnt a lot from them as well. We'll just have to see if that's a true statement, over the next, 4 years or so, going into the next generation. But ultimately, I think that's what it is. I mean, you really just, each company just kind of does things their own way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I do want to bring up Sony's attempts at doing live service and games as a service. because Helldivers 2 was a big success. But as Shinobi mentioned, we did have Naughty Dog spend years working on the Last of Us factions, which was canceled based on reports. Bungie came in, evaluated the game, said this is not up to par, or at least not to their standards of what a games as a service should be. That led to Sony shelving the project. We also had reports that a Twisted Metal game was in development. That has since been canceled, and the reports around Twisted Metal was that was going to be a live service game of some kind. We have Concord just on the verge of releasing. It had a closed and an open beta. Reception has been mixed. And we do have the Jade Raymond game coming out ideally next year. I forget the name of it at present.
Fair Games. Fair Games $.
That's it, Fair Games. How do we feel about Sony's effort in the live service genre? And do we think Sony will abandon this, or are they going to potentially double down and increase their live service output in the next few years? And we'll go to Shinobi for this one to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a mix, a bit of both. I think they've come to the realization that, live service games in themselves, like they need a lot of resources. Like if Bungie as a studio, if you look at Bungie as an example as a studio, they're almost 1,000 people, and you need that kind of manpower, that kind of bandwidth to be able to put out, to consistently work on something like Destiny 2, and they're making Marathon, of course, but like you need a whole team dedicated just to that one or two games in order to handle a live service game. So I feel like they're kind of they came to that realization. Not like Naughty Dog was literally public. They were transparent about it, where they said I don't know if you guys remember when they put out that statement that they saw themselves at kind of crossroads. It's like, do we continue going down this path, and we're gonna have to put all of our headcount, all of our resources behind this game, and just it's probably pivot to like a live service style company, or do we go back to doing what we do best? And that's they bit the bullet, and that's what they did. So I also commend them for that. But I think Sony as a whole is going to continue testing the waters where they can. Like Helldivers 2, we saw it was a juggernaut. It was a massive success, unexpected success. Probably, I'm sure they did not. They probably knew it was going to be successful, but nowhere near the amount that it is. So I think they're like any publisher. They're going to continue kind of funding live service projects and just seeing like what hits. They're gonna keep wherever they can. Just Concord might not hit. Just kind of looking at the numbers and stuff. Who knows? Who knows how that's going to do at launch? But that could, if one live service game doesn't land, it's like, okay, that could be a write-off. When another one like Helldivers 2 is so huge, so like they're going to keep seeing like, trying to find, these evergreen titles and titles that just keep making them money and stuff, gobs of money. So a lot of publishers operate that way. EA does that a lot. Like they have Apex Legends. I don't know what other live server stuff they have. I'm just kind of spitting off the top of my head. They have some, Apex Legends. So I'm sure they'll try other live service games down the road to see what else sticks. And at the same time, it seems like they are being smart about it. Like, we learned that they kind of scaled back a little bit, or pushed kind of half of their live service games a little further out. So, maybe they're kind of taking another look at them, making sure that, their design concepts and design pillars all work and stuff. And they're just kind of going back to the drawing board, or just giving them more time. So who knows? Mm-hmm. But I feel like they're trying to find a good balance. I don't know if you guys agree, but it seems like they're trying to find a good balance. So
I totally agree with you. I think the way that I've always felt about how Sony is approaching live service games, Nate, is exactly what Shinobi said, that they are trying different things and seeing what sticks. I know that sounds crazy to say that because we're talking about millions of dollars and thousands of resources, but I think that's ultimately what it is. I think most publishers out there still don't know what the formula is. The formula is for a successful live service game, and they're still trying to find it, right? Helldivers 2 was a success, and now Sony is going to continue with the live service model. Obviously, a game such as Concord is probably not going to land for them. I think what they're probably going to do is just quietly, take it out back, as much as I hate to say it, and they're going to move on to the next one. We heard some reports, I believe, that there was X number of live service games that are currently being developed internally. We still don't know what they are. So I think really it's just a matter of they're going to continue to build these games. Most of them will probably fail. They can take the bumps along the way. They can mitigate some of the fallout from it. They can learn from it. And then whatever's next, should be better, should be more successful. And I think ultimately, look, they're just trying to find their Fortnite at the end of the day. They're trying to find their game that can compete with something like Fortnite. Will they get there? They might. They might be successful. And I think really that's really how I feel about it.
Yep.
Yeah, the interesting thing, as you brought up Shinobi, is when Naughty Dog came out and they did explain why Factions was, canceled. And as they mentioned, we would have to dedicate the entire development team, the entire studio to the game for 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
When you read the memo, it really did come off as this was the right decision for that studio.
Right.
They could not commit themselves to that type of project, especially when you look at the talent and the caliber of output that Naughty Dog has really put out since the PlayStation 1 in terms of games. They are an iconic development house. They put out some of the most revolutionary games to come to this industry, and to see them be relegated to a live service game would have really been disappointing in the long term if you are a Naughty Dog or even a Sony fan, because you would want them to go off and do The Last of Us Part 3 or a new IP and continue to innovate and create interesting new properties for us to play from a single player narrative point. So it definitely was the right decision for them. Yeah. And it's going to be curious how Sony does approach the live service, because as both of you have said, this can be a very lucrative business. It's just a question of, will you be able to find a project that does bring about that level of success? And right now, Helldivers 2 seems to be Sony's successful golden goose. We do have new content coming to the game in just a couple of weeks, but they're going to have their fair share of flounders, Concord likely being one. And we had Destruction Derby All-Stars towards the launch of the system that did so poorly that they had to throw it on PlayStation Plus because nobody bought the game. They had minimal pre-orders, and they had to add bots into online play because no one was playing the game anymore. Yeah. But it's, as we said, we had Jade Raymond's game still to come. There are other ones that have yet to be announced. They could be quietly canceled in the background. They could be announced in the coming months or sometime next year. So Sony's approach is going to be interesting.
Yeah, the Horizon multiplayer game apparently. So I mean,
that's right.
Should be still coming along.
Yep, waiting for an update on what's happening with the Horizon MMO game. I mean, that has potential. Sony has been pushing Horizon to kind of really be one of their mascot IPs at this point. They're really trying to make Alloy the face, kind of a face of the brand at this point. So
I mean, I would say I would personally say they've succeeded to various degrees on that end. I mean, I even though you see a lot of kind of online hate or whatever, here and there on some different social spheres, but I think for the most part the sales and the fan arts and the memes and all that kind of stuff, the love people have for the franchise, I think that speaks for itself, that it is a very popular IP, and they did a good job with that. I mean, I have to commend Guerrilla. They coming off of they were making known for that, making this, dingy future, shooters with Killzone, and to pivot and just make an awesome open world action adventure RPG is like, I mean, that is not an easy thing to pull off. So
Right.
hats off to them.
Now, to finish off this segment, I'm going to go with this question. With the tail end of 2024 being exceptionally strong in terms of Sony first-party output, do we think Sony's 2025 is going to be one of their stronger years for this generation?
For this generation, I will say yes, it will be one of their stronger years. It seems like they're primed to have a good year next year. Like I said, their silence this year shouldn't really be taken as anything other than they're just cooking right now. They're not really, ready to show us anything. There's also, and I know we're going to talk about this as well, Nate, later on, but new hardware on the horizon as well. So I think the combination of those two things, plus the continuation of the way that they've been doing business, PC ports as well, new announcements on that front, potentially some other updates as well. I think they're in a good spot to have a good year next year. But I also will kind of, say that also depends on how the remainder of this year goes for them. Like, I feel like, you mentioned a state of play potentially or some type of showcase in September. I feel like we need more communication from them, and I think we'll get it to kind of whet our appetites for 2025 and beyond. So, I will say that if we don't get something from the Sony camp that's kind of, meaningful and meaty enough to kind of, marinate on that for a while, then that may be a different story. But I'm confident that, we will hear more from Sony camp again, like I said, Q3 this year. And I do think next year will be probably their most important and one of their best, years this generation.
Yeah, I agree with Vintage mostly. I mean, obviously, we're in July now. We're coming into August. I feel like they've, if you got big stuff next year, you're gonna have to announce them at some point. So I think we'll probably, start seeing or hearing about stuff in the next few months. I mean, I would imagine. I think we'll definitely see some higher profile launches next year. I mean, right off the top, right from the top, we heard from. I'm pretty sure it was Sony's president, I think, Totoki, say himself, not to expect anything from their major franchises this year, but to expect that sort of stuff in fiscal 25 and 2026. So we know they're coming, and timing wise with development schedules, it would line up. So, we Death Stranding 2 is already penciled in for next year, and that looks amazing already. That's one I can't wait for. I love the first one. I think it'll make it because I believe Kojima himself said recently that they finished all the VO and mocap and stuff. So I expect it's probably close to content complete, if not already, and they'll likely hit whatever date they have next year. But then you look at a lot of their other teams. There's a lot of possibilities. I mean, we know Bungie's been working on Marathon for a very long time now. I could see that possibly coming. Ragnarok came out a couple years ago now, and we know Santa Monica's been working on something for a while too. So that's not Ragnarok, so that could be another one for sure. Insomniac, Spider-Man 2 came out just about a year ago now, but could we, they're a very efficient team, and they're working on Wolverine, but could we maybe see another kind of Miles Morales sized title next year, or at least some DLC maybe? And Guerrilla's been working, like we just talked about, working on a multiplayer Horizon game for years now that we've heard about it. And they confirmed that themselves, I think, either last year or the year before. So we know that's coming at some point. Sucker Punch, let's be real, obviously with how huge first game was, we know it's, they have to be on Ghost of Tsushima 2 or whatever they end up calling it. That was, the first one was 4 years ago. So Blue Point's, like we said, Blue Point, Demon Souls, that was at PS5's launch. So that's almost 4 years old now. And they've been really tight-lipped in what they're doing. So yeah, I think my understanding is that we could we'll definitely see some pretty good stuff next year from at least a few teams. I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, one of the teams I would like to add to your list that I hope we see a new game from them, be it announced or released next year, is Housemark.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Agree.
Oh, Returnal, so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 3 years now plus since Returnal launched. And I mean, they are quite an efficient team themselves, especially with their style of arcadey, that genre. So I'd love for, I won't say Returnal 2, though I would definitely accept that if that is their project.
Well,
But whatever they have.
They did say it was a new IP. So
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of ways they could go with a project. So whatever they are cooking, I look forward to. We also haven't seen anything from Media Molecule this generation.
Yeah. No.
So they're an interesting, I'd consider them kind of a wild card at this point, depending on what they're working on.
Yeah.
And, they could surprise us in what they are crafting right now. But there's potential for 2025 to be a very exciting year, not just in terms of releases for the reason Shinobi and MVG have detailed, but also in the terms of announcements, because a lot of these studios are at the point or overdue to make an announcement for the projects they are working on.
Right.
So we are in that lull, which every generation has to experience, because you can't have heavy output every single year. It's just not going to fall that way with your development teams. But that means when you're in a lull, you're building up to an eruption. And that's where Sony is right now. You're getting the little quakes, the tremors are starting, and their volcano is prepping for an eruption in terms of announcements and releases. And I think Astrobot is kind of that first significant indication. That is that smoke spewing from the geyser that things are ramping up. And then 2025 is going to be that boom moment for everything just comes together in terms of Sony output for the generation.
Yeah, I agree. I think between now and the end of calendar 2025, like we'll have either had several big releases or have seen announcements from a lot of their studios, because we're, like Tozoki said, we're now kind of we're heading in that second half of the generation. So I feel like this is kind of like that next big wave, and this is it all lines up. So I think 2025, 2026 are going to be really big years, just because of timing. So I'm super excited.
I do want to bring up how Sony's first party output, but also their third party relations compare to previous generations. Because I think one of the constants dating back to PlayStation 1 has been Sony's strength to ally itself with third party partners to secure timed exclusives and publishing deals. And when you look at Sony's publishing deals and timed exclusives during the PlayStation 5 generation, I think that once again reflects Sony's means to prioritize their third-party partners. They go out of their way to secure these games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, Silent Hill 2, Stellar Blade, Rise of the Ronin, titles of high quality to fill out their lineup when they don't have significant major first-party games to release in a calendar year or a stretch of months. Because when we look at the output that Sony was having, let's say during the PlayStation 3, where Naughty Dog put out 4 games, Insomniac put out 2 games and a DLC. Insomniac put out how many Ratchet and Clank games and Resistance games? Like 7 or 8?
Yeah, there's like 7 or 8
like
of
that.
those.
Sucker Punch put out 2 games and a DLC.
Yep.
Whereas this generation, we might get 1 original Naughty Dog game. We maybe get 1 original Sucker Punch game.
Oh.
And, we'll probably get a half a dozen games from Insomniac this generation. But it's that importance of those third-party relations. And I think Sony just once again is doing a masterful job at securing quality releases. And then it's the way they market these games. they market them in a way where people think these games are, they're exclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if they're timed exclusive, or even some just multi-platform third-party games like Resident Evil 4. I had friends believe that was a PlayStation 5 exclusive game and that it wasn't on Xbox because Sony prioritized that game in all of the state of plays or even PlayStation showcases. And Sony, once again, is just doing that this generation. And that's been really the constant since their inception. They make you believe that these games are really kind of mascots to their brand, despite them being from third-party partners. And it just fills those voids when Sony themselves doesn't have games to release in those stretches of time. Do you both feel as though, Sony continues to do that brilliant work partnering with third-party brands, or do you think maybe they've kind of pivoted away from it a little bit this generation?
No, so first off, I'll say, in terms of their output, I think there's undoubtedly been, less frequent cadence of games coming from them. I think really a lot of that just comes down to modern game development. I mean, it's not a secret that these huge, big budget AAA games take a really, really long time to land. They got to land on a concept, got a prototype to define those, design pillars, those design hooks, build out the environments, you got a mocap, got to record all this while, managing teams of hundreds, sometimes like thousands of people. And when people have been conditioned to games that require that amount of effort, they expect more from games every generation, and it'll just keep going up and up. I mean, oh my God, like you look at something like GTA 6, and that budget is probably something like $1 billion if you include everything, I'm sure. It's just nuts. So, unless you have, 30 studios in your pocket pumping out games, it's going to take longer. And to the other point, I mean, you can see Sony trying to shore up those gaps as much as they can with these exclusivity agreements. Final Fantasy is is definitely a big one. Publishing stuff like Rise of the Ronin, lots of indie darlings that they've put out over the last couple years. Partnerships with Hoyoverse, for example, that's a big one. Getting all their games on the PlayStation, that's a really big one that people don't really think about, but it definitely gives their brand huge appeal, especially in Asia. Silent Hill 2 is the one you mentioned. And I don't really have any problems with that kind of approach personally. I didn't have a problem when Xbox did it with Rise of the Tomb Raider either, way back when. I don't know, to me, like it's just business. But maybe that's my privilege talking because I always buy all the consoles anyway, so I don't really miss out on anything. So it's probably a bit of that, but yeah, it's just business to me. It's shoring up those gaps, and they do it really smartly. They're very smart about it. Those shoring up those vacancies wherever you can, and make sure I think it's really just making sure your audience continues to have stuff that they perceive that makes the platform special or unique, and it gives it value. So to me, that's just smart business.
I think that Sony has a very long relationship with some of their partners, especially like a company like Square Enix with Final Fantasy, because a lot of those games originally were on PlayStation, Nate. It's very easy just to kind of remind people that, hey, this is the platform that you want to play Final Fantasy on because we gave you Final Fantasy on the PlayStation 1, Final Fantasy 7. I think, they're very good at just kind of maintaining those relationships, maintaining those kind of exclusivity deals and making sure that, their marketing is good enough just to remind people that, look, the only way you can play these games is on PlayStation, even though that may not be a true statement, because we've always provided these games for you in the past. So you don't need to go anywhere else. You don't need an Xbox. You just stick with us because we will take care of you just like we have for, the last 25 years of our life. So I think it's really just a case of they've always been really good with their partners. They treat them well and they continue to do so. And I think that's not going to change.
I think Hogwarts was another big one that people don't think about. Like they kind of treated that like it was almost a first party game.
Yeah.
I mean, They really marketed that thing, and I think I don't know if they had bundles or anything with it. I don't think they did, but they marketed the hell out of that thing, and I think I would imagine the margins, the breakdown, if you look at it, was probably, I mean, and disproportionate amount of people probably bought a PS5 for it or bought it on the PS5 they already owned. So I mean, Sony's they're very good when it comes to these things.
See, Shinobi, you brought up an interesting point a little earlier, and it was a controversy that a lot of people debated a couple of years back. And it was Sony's use of timed exclusive deals where people were saying, this is unfair. This is anti-consumer. This is a bad business practice for the consumer because you're taking away freedom of choice by securing a game for 18 or 24 months before the game could come to PC or could come to Xbox. And as you said, potentially speaking from, a place of privilege for having all the systems, that by them doing this business practice, it doesn't concern you, but it was something that was hotly debated for a while. And I think we just happened to kind of grow up in the generations where timed exclusives were a common practice. That's how you lured in consumers to your brand. You want to play this game? We have it exclusive for 12 months. And as a gamer, you kind of just fall into that trap of, well, I want to be there day one. I want to be part of that day one conversation. I want to talk to my friends about it because we're all going to buy that game. I don't want to be the one left out. And that's what Sony is doing here for, Final Fantasy VII or Silent Hill 2, Final Fantasy 16, the list goes on and on. And gradually these games are finding way to PC. Some are finding way to Xbox. And I think I was kind of taken aback by it becoming such a controversial topic in, I want to say it was last year, maybe, so 2023. And I think it would even come up now in the case of a high profile exclusive, because there's still a lot of people angry that Sony has secured Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as console exclusive right now. And it's really baffling to me that this point of time in 2024 that gamers are angry about these standard business deals, because I don't view it as anti-consumer. It's just pro-business.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, I know a lot of people hate me saying that, but again, I'm sure I know a part of it is because I own all the consoles, so it doesn't really affect me. But it's I mean, me growing up, that's how things have always been. I mean, if I wanted to play Project Gotham Racing or Lunch's Odyssey or whatever, I bought an Xbox. If I wanted to play I don't know, GTA 3 or whatever, it was exclusive for a while. I had to get a PS2. Xbox, the original Xbox, that Splinter Cell was timed exclusive for a while. It's just, I don't know, that's the way I grew up playing games, and I kind of, to me, it's just like it is like a regular bit, pro business approach. I mean, for example, if you wanted to, like, if you look at all the streaming platforms like Netflix and Apple TV and HBO Max and everything. I mean, they each have different exclusive content. If you want to watch this, you got to watch on our platform. So that's kind of just the way I look at it. I mean, I didn't have any problem with that when Xbox did it with, again, like I said, Rise of Tomb Raider, a decade ago. To me, that was a smart business move. They had a gap they wanted to shore up in the action adventure. They wanted their own Uncharted. So, I was like, all right, yeah, it makes sense to me. So I don't know, maybe that's just me again, because I own everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was just a really interesting time to see that become a hot topic of debate, because it really felt as though it was nothing. We've always seen it. I mean, Microsoft benefited hugely from it during the 360 generation, where you had games like Ninja Gaiden 2, Mass Effect,
BioShock.
BioShock, Lost Planet. They had so many games that were timed exclusive for, a period of time. And that made people go out and buy a 360 because it was a better platform to game on than a PlayStation 3. And Sony just continues to do that. And, now I would say companies are a little more forthcoming. with the terms of these time deals, like every single Square Enix trailer you see at the bottom, console exclusive for 12 months, 6 months, whatever. And we know, it can come to PC or it could come to another platform once that date of expiration arrives. And you just have to wait for the publisher or the developer to come out and say, yes, we're bringing this to another platform. Whereas back in the day, maybe operated a little more in the dark, but it's going to continue. Sony leverages it to their strengths. And that's what makes the PlayStation such an inviting home for so many gamers because of the variety of software that they do host. And one game I want to bring up, because this was kind of news not too long ago, is that there's an apparent rumor going around that Black Myth Wukong is a Sony timed exclusive, yet there is no official information suggesting it is a Sony timed exclusive outside of a report from Windows Central. And I have a hard time believing that suggestion, because if it were, I feel Sony would be marketing the game a little heavier and kind of boasting that we have the game exclusively for X amount of time, versus the official statement from the development team was, we're optimizing the game on Xbox Series S and we just need a little more time. So I wonder, why would the suggestion of it being a Sony timed exclusive even arise?
Oh God, that's a good question, man. I wish I had the answer to. I don't know. People are just really hyper online nowadays, and I think it's with that, with that being hyper online, it's just there are all kinds of talking points come about, and there's Sony has kind of in certain circles kind of seen as this kind of shady behind closed doors broker who's kind of going around and bribing people with cash and throwing bags of money and around. And so I think with that, it's probably I guess the automatic assumption at that time was, oh boy, he's another one, another Sony exclusive money hat or whatever the case may be. But no, I would believe the developers on this one. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a surprising report where, just to suggest that, because no other company has hidden the fact that Sony's made an exclusive deal with them, be it timed exclusive or a publishing deal or anything of the sort. So I don't know why this would be the exception to that rule, but that was definitely a controversial topic not too long ago. And now I want to pivot to another topic, and it's PlayStation Plus Classics, which have definitely been a hot topic for a while because Sony raised the price of PlayStation Plus and people kind of wondered whether or not there was a value in the service for these new high prices. You also had some questions about the emulation of PS1 games and PSP games, as well as PlayStation 2 games, which recently came to the service. And very recently, a rumor went around that Sony is working on PlayStation 3 backwards compatibility, as the reports put it, but it would really be PS3 emulation for native emulation. But to go back to PlayStation Plus, how do we feel about the quality of this service? Because they introduced this a couple of years back by just giving us a Netflix style of games for a high yearly rate. And do we think they've really delivered quality in terms of the game selection to this point? And we'll start with you, MVG.
Frankly speaking, no, they have not. I've been someone that has been on PlayStation Plus. Obviously, I'm a big fan of emulation. I love retro games, as you know, Nate. And I ended up just canceling the service when they did the price increase. I felt like the output that they were giving us wasn't really where it needed to be, especially after when they did increase the price of the service. I didn't really feel like they've given us anything compelling for me to stick around and stay on. I do know that they have, been doing more work in recent times. They've been providing some new updates. Obviously, the introduction of PlayStation 2 games has been a thing as well. Look, ultimately, I don't think it's worth the money at this juncture. That could change though. That all they really need to do is just add some more value to that service, and it would be something I'd take a look at again. But like I said, it's for me, Nate. It's just not worth the money. I'm not really someone that goes back and revisits older games. Some of the games they put on the service that I haven't played before, sometimes they're worth a look. I think the last one that I actually played, embarrassingly enough, was Saints Row, because I wanted to see how bad that game was, and it was pretty bad, all things considered. But I've not really touched the service ever since. I will say that I did, on the emulations front, I did purchase outright the Sly Cooper release. Number one, to take a look at the emulation quality itself, and number two, because I love Sly Cooper, and I was happy that it was on the PlayStation. But I'm happy enough just to purchase that game. Hopefully that that game will be brought forward as well in my library. When Sony releases new hardware going forward. They've done that before with games that you've purchased on the PS3 or on the Vita. Sometimes they're made available to you. If you've already purchased them, they're available to you on PlayStation Plus. So hopefully they'll do the same thing here as well. But I guess, that was a very long answer for me to tell you that I am not really a big fan of PlayStation Plus in its current state. I think they need to do more.
Yeah. So, I mean, first I'll start off by, I want to put some respect on Saints Row's name a little bit, because Vintage kind of dragged it through the mud there a little bit, but because that was one of the first games I bought. Not one of the first. I mean, I got a 360 at launch, but I bought Saints Row at when it first released day one, and it was a good kind of stopgap GTA clone that just kind of served its purpose, and I loved it for that. So I just wanted to say that, put that out there. But yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add on this one because, I think I agree with Vintage. It could definitely use improvement. I'll be honest, I'm the same way, where I don't really go back and play classics that much. So they're not really a big pull for me personally. I have seen some, because I usually post, I kind of tweet out, the what's new each month and stuff. So I see what's on there. I've seen some pretty good stuff on there in the past, the Siphon Filter and Parappa and Resistance, and Jean d'Arc recently. That was an awesome PSP game that I loved on my PSP. So it's not like there hasn't been good stuff, but it does feel like, Sony has a really deep catalog that they could pull from, and I think they could do a much better job doing that. And I hope they do that. But I'm not a big subscription guy. I don't have Game Pass. I know it might be kind of blasphemous to some people. I don't really use Game Pass, namely because really I have a lot of time debt, so I can only have a specific amount of time I can play every week. So it would be kind of a waste for me. And I only sub to PlayStation Plus so I can play multiplayer games. So I don't really take advantage of what's on offer every month, except on occasion. So. But I do agree in the overall feeling that I think they could do a better job giving it more value. So I hope they do that. And there's been some good. I've seen some months where people are like, "Oh, this was fire month, and this is a great month," and then other months where it's like, "This is trash." So hopefully they can get a better cadence going.
Do you think the addition of, let's say, PlayStation 3 games to the service would help justify the current pricing structure for the service? Or do you think they just have to do a better job in terms of their drip feed release? Because there's a lot of PlayStation 1 games, PSP, and PlayStation 2 games that they could offer on the service, especially if they do partner with some of the third-party publishing teams that do have games on the service. Like Capcom has games, Bandai Namco have games, SNK, NIS America, and so forth. So which of those two, or do you think it's a combination of the two, would need to be kind of put in conjunction to deliver on the value that you both are seeking?
I want to see.
Sorry, go ahead, Vintage.
I was just going to say I'd like to see a bit of both. The drip feeding, it's cool, but it also reminds me of NSO in some way. Although, to be fair on Sony, they do turn up every single month with new games, unlike NSO where they just drop 3 games whenever they feel like it. So there's definitely more there, but you're also paying more money for the privilege, right? So I think they have to at least offer, a monthly update of new games. PlayStation 3, Nate, that would really be something that would be very interesting to me. I'm a big fan of PlayStation 3, and I'd love to play some old PS3 classics on my PlayStation 5. The only thing I'm going to say is I don't believe that rumor to be actually accurate based on my technical knowledge of the PlayStation 3 and what I feel like would be attainable on the PS5. It's very hard for me to actually believe that rumor to be nothing more than just some speculation at this time.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any inside knowledge. So I don't know if that will ever come or not. But I mean, I do agree. Basically, adding PS3 games would definitely shoot it up in value in a lot of people's eyes. I mean, there's a lot of classics on PS3, a lot of obscure games that you can't really find anymore or can't play, and it's just, I think that would definitely give a lot more value to a lot of people.
Nate,
sure.
I have a question for you on this topic. Let's just say for argument's sake that the PlayStation 3 back compat thing is real, and they announce it and they provide it to us. Do you think this is something that Sony would then add as another tier on top of Premium Plus? Is it Premium Plus? In much of the same way as Nintendo offers Nintendo 64 games on a premium service? Do you think that Sony would do that if they had, let's say that they just gave us, and I'll just start with 5 quality PlayStation 3 titles that they choose to get people excited about the service? Do you think that's something that they would just bundle with their PlayStation Plus? Or do you think that they would say, look, this is PS3. We spent literally millions of dollars of research and development getting this emulation up and running, and we need to get some type of return on investment on it. So we're going to charge a little bit more for it.
I'm of two minds on this question. I would, as a fan, I would keep the prices and the tiers the same as they currently are and offer PlayStation 3, because you can sell the games as individual standalone games. I can charge you $20 for a PlayStation 3 game, $30 for a PlayStation 3 game, depending on the quality of the emulation work.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's similar to what we see with the PS1, PSP, and even the PlayStation 2 games with save states and all those basic features, you sell those games for $20, $25. You're going to have a considerable audience who will just purchase the games without being subscribed to Game Pass or to PlayStation Plus like yourself. So let's say they offered Folklore on the service for $25. You'd be tempted to purchase it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Or, you have Puppeteer.
Oh, I wouldn't even hesitate. I would buy it immediately. Great game.
So, if I'm Sony, I think I would go that approach versus introducing a higher price tier with all of the previous perks plus PlayStation 3 games, simply because by selling them as a standalone, as a secondary complementary option to players, I'm making money anyways. And if I were to introduce a higher price tier, I think you have to do something similar as Nintendo does with NSO. I don't sell the games, because the whole incentive for you to upgrade and give me more money per month or for the year is that this is the only means of access to those games. Mm-hmm. And I don't see Sony doing that, especially the way they've approached PlayStation Plus Classic to this point. So I think they would do the former of same pricing structure, the exact same tiers as it is now, and just sell the games individually. But if you are subscribed, you get access to the games day one, no additional charge. Now, will we ever get PlayStation 3 games on the service? I mean, that's the big question. And given the state of PlayStation 2 emulation right now, which is a bit mixed, I do wonder how well Sony could feasibly do PlayStation 3 emulation on it if they were somehow able to actually achieve backwards compatibility, which is different from emulation, as we know. That's an entirely different conversation. But right now, I'm not banking too much on that rumor. I think the part of the rumor that is true is that Sony is exploring and working on trying to find a solution.
Yes.
I think that much is true. They are working on it. Whether or not it ever comes to see the light of day, that's a different matter entirely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think, look, most of these companies, hardware makers, they're always, there's always an R&D department that's always iterating and always building things, right? There's been some patents that have come around, over the years from Sony talking about emulation layers and backward compatibility. There's definitely work that's going on behind the scenes. But, as I've always said, when the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 came out, there was a bit of a pivot between the two companies in terms of the way that they wanted to handle backward compatibility. Sony chose the hardware route where they just had PS2 chips in the PS3. Later on, that they switched to a software-based emulation approach, which I might add did drop compatibility quite a lot. I think it was almost 100% compatible with PlayStation 2 and PS1 games when they had the original PlayStation 3 models that had the hardware built in. With the software later on, that kind of dropped to about 75%, I think. And Microsoft, they've always just used a software-based emulation approach, right? And why am I saying this? Well, it's because Microsoft has been working on their emulation layer since 2005. Sony, while I do think they have their own suite of tech, and they do, because we've already seen a bunch of it, I think that they're still a little bit behind where they need to be. So, going back to your thought, does PlayStation 3 exist in some R&D lab at Sony HQ somewhere? It probably does. When will we see that appear? I couldn't say. I mean, it's probably not going to be this generation if I'm going to speak frankly. It's maybe something that they have ready to go for the next generation. That would make sense to me. Maybe, launch the PS6 with, a revigorated, re-energized PlayStation Plus model with PlayStation 3 games. That would be very exciting. I think it would be really a great kind of selling point for the hardware. But look, I'm just speculating at this point. But I do agree that, look, there's probably internal work that's going on with regards to PS3.
Now, I am going to propose one more value boosting possibility to each of you. Do you think Sony will ever consider putting games day one on PlayStation Plus, like Game Pass? Shinobi, go to you first.
I really don't think they would. I feel like, Jim Ryan is a very savvy businessman, and he made the case, and I think I believe I remember reading something from Sean Layden before in the past too, where for Sony, the numbers just don't add up for them. Their first party titles are seen as these huge, just tentpole events, for a lot of their teams, God of War, Horizon, Spider-Man, and they make their money back on these games, and some. These games are profitable. Now it's getting a little tougher because like as we saw a little bit about Spider-Man 2, that the budget was massive, but it still made its money back. And it's probably profitable now. But it's Game Pass was born out of necessity. It came at a time when Xbox was struggling a lot with the Xbox One. PS4 had just taken the baton and just sprinted off with it. So Game Pass was born out of necessity, and it was a pivot to kind of position Xbox as the best place to play game, to give value to consumers and stuff. And I think that definitely worked in their favor. They have so many, they have tens of millions of subscribers, but we don't know. We really don't know the financials behind Game Pass. We don't know the numbers. We don't know if we've heard Phil Spencer say that it's profitable, or it's a good business for them and they make money on it, it's profitable, but we don't know holistically like the effect that it has on Xbox, the Xbox division and stuff. And I feel like people that game on PlayStation, they're willing to you have tens of millions of people that buy these huge temple releases on day one, and Sony makes their money back. They make a lot of money in these games. I don't know if they have the cojones to honestly to bite the bullet. And I remember was it Herman Holst or Jim Ryan, or I think it was Jim Ryan maybe when he was still there, mentioned that they lost money on Horizon Forbidden West when they added it to PS Plus, and the trajectory of sales, at least for Horizon, I don't know if they lost money. It was sales of Horizon Forbidden West had just tanked basically when they put it on the service. So I don't know if they have the appetite for that. I don't foresee it happening anytime soon, at least. Say Xbox has been doing this for years now, and it has not had a tangible effect on kind of bringing people over from PlayStation to Xbox, or growing their user base, growing their console base or anything. So I feel like Sony is, I mean, from what I can see, at least on the outside looking in, it seems like they're happy where they are.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think Sony is interested in day one releases like that. Look, Shinobi brought some good points with regards to Game Pass. I don't really feel like that fits within their business model. That's not really something that they've ever been interested in. And, you mentioned, Game Pass kind of was born out of necessity. And I had to stop and think about that comment for a minute, but you're absolutely right. Because I remember, Satya was ready to close Xbox down, like 2017, 2016.
Yeah. They were in a bad way.
Yeah, my dates may be a little off there, but I think we can all agree that Satya was ready to kind of just pull the plug, and Phil basically said, "Look, I can fix this. I can make this successful, but you need to give me the tools to make it happen." I think Game Pass was one of those pillars of that, and obviously new hardware was another one, as well as cloud as well. So. Yeah, look, you're right. It was born out of necessity. Sony doesn't need to go down that road, I don't think. I think the way that they've sold games to their customers hasn't really changed. I mean, there's different ways to deliver those things to customers these days, but ultimately, it's pay your money and you get your game and enjoy it for X number of hours.
Now we're going to go to the PlayStation 5 Pro, the still rumored piece of hardware that is slated to come out later this year, per reports. And I just want to get some general thoughts, predictions on, on the hardware itself, our interest levels and such. And I'll start with the launch window. When do we think the PlayStation 5 Pro will release? Will it come out this calendar year, or do we think maybe it'll find itself in the first half of 2025? And we'll start with Shinobi on this one.
Yeah. So I mean, to caveat, as someone myself, I work in the industry and with a lot of different clients and stuff. So I'll say this is all theoretical on my part, not confirmation of anything or dates or prices or anything, just by speculation. But I'll say if the PS5 Pro is real, and it sounds like it is, it would seem logical to me that it follows a similar path that PS4 Pro had. We know from reports that if it is indeed launching this year, for PS4 Pro, they had a separate PlayStation meeting kind of event in September that year. I think it was 2016, where they officially revealed it alongside a bunch of different games and HDR and checkerboard 4K and everything, and it launched just a couple months later in that November. So I don't see why that would really change this time around. I mean, it from all suggestions, it seems like they're progressing fine. So That would be my assumption.
Yeah, just to add to that, I also am someone that works in the industry, so this is only speculation on my behalf as well. Obviously, everyone's waiting to hear from Sony as to, when this thing will be announced, and all that stuff. Look, I think it's probably going to be 2025, Nate, when it does release. I think it will get announced this year. There is, there's a lot of rumblings that Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show, not Gamescom. Gamescom's actually in a couple of weeks from the making of this episode. But I think Tokyo Game Show is kind of the smart money right now that people are thinking. That's when Sony is going to make this announcement. They are going to be attending the show, I believe, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the first show that they've attending in a while, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. So I think that can't be understated as well, that Sony is, starting to turn up to these events again. And I think they're going to turn up to Tokyo Game Show with something to show, and I think it's going to be this. I don't think it's going to make this year. And honestly, Nate, I don't know if it even needs to be honest. Like, there is obviously that thought process that, well, maybe we should get this system out before the holiday so we can really maximize our sales potential. I don't know if they necessarily need to do that with the PlayStation 5 Pro. If they have a showcase this year and they do show us, what they've got cooking for next year, and there are some big titles in that mix, I think that's going to be enough. And also, we have to remember that Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out next year. And for all intents and purposes, if the rumored specifications of the PS5 Pro are to be believed, then it's probably going to be the best console that you're going to want to get to play GTA 6 on, as it's going to offer the best performance and the best visuals and the best fidelity. So I think really it doesn't necessarily need to come out this year. I think 2025 is the move for it.
I'll caveat real quick, Nate, and I think the way that I was looking at it, I don't know how many PS5 Sony's sold this fiscal year yet, but I think the last financials that they had, they were forecasting like 18 or 19 million consoles sold this fiscal year. So I don't know how many they've sold so far, but my assumption is my thinking is that they're taking a theoretical PS5 Pro into account, because that's only down like 2 million units from last fiscal year. So to me, it sounds like there's something else coming that will boost those numbers up to hit that 18, 19 million. And they don't have like a huge kind of holiday first party title. So, I mean, I feel like new fresh hardware would kind of would add a couple, a million or two to that number. So I'm thinking maybe that's kind of what they're alluding to, but man, I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I'm in agreement with you that the PlayStation 5 Pro will come out later this year. I think it will be positioned before Black Friday to really just capitalize on those holiday sales. And if they want to put together a bundle of some sort, they can. I don't necessarily know what game you would bundle with it.
Well, hold on. Let's stop there. What games do you bundle with a PlayStation 5 Pro? What is the killer app that you have with this game that you want to compel people to upgrade to? Because I think that's the difficult part that Sony has right now, and that is, yes, they have rumored a new powerful system that is a lot more powerful than the current model, and that's fantastic. But you have to have something alongside of it. I don't think Astrobot is gonna cut it, even though that game is going to be fantastic. You're going to have an amazing experience on a base PS5. I think if you do offer the PS5 Pro, you have to have something alongside of it to really kind of get people excited about it.
Right, and I mean that's when you would have to look at the reveal event, let's say it's September, where you would come out with a trailer or an announcement of a previously released PlayStation 5 game that has been patched and enhanced on PlayStation 5 Pro. So let's just use Spider-Man 2 as the example. You have enhanced ray tracing on PlayStation 5 Pro.
I don't think it's enough.
It's running at 60 FPS with all of the ray tracing, native 4K, something like that.
I don't think that's enough, honestly. I think there needs to be more. I mean, yeah, you can definitely do that. And look, the ride or dies are going to buy this stuff. I mean, we're going to buy a PS5 Pro. I'm going to buy one no matter what, right? The day that hopefully I can get one, I will get one. But a lot of people are going to be like, well, why do I need this? Why am I compelled to upgrade to this? And I think they have to have something alongside of it. Now, maybe if they did have some free updates, we'll just call it PS5 Pro mode to certain games, and then they tease, what's coming next year. Maybe that's a little better. But I feel like if you are going to drop a console this year, there has to be something that you have that you consume alongside of it. That's more than just a patch that offers ray tracing with Spider-Man 2. I personally, I've beaten the game. I have no reason to go back and play that game. I think a lot of people may feel the same way.
So I'll say this. The reason why I don't think that it's like you necessarily need this one massive temple that you have to juxtapose next to the PS5 Pro is when PS4 Pro came out in late 2016, Sony didn't really have, I don't believe Sony had any major first party title that launched alongside of it in holiday 2016. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nate.
No, you're right.
Know better than me, but I'm pretty sure Uncharted 4 came out like that summer. Mm-hmm. So that was already way ahead of PS4 Pro. There was nothing that PS4 Pro launched with in particular. So what they did was they had a lot of, they partnered with a lot of third parties, a lot of big third party games that year that, hey, you want the best looking, you want the place to for these third party games to look the best, to play the best, perform the best. They're on PS4 Pro. And I feel like Sony will probably position this the same way. Hey, I play Helldivers 2 on my PS5. I play in performance mode, so 60 FPS, but it's at 1080p. It's kind of grainy. It's kind of looks a little washed out a little bit. They could have that. Hey, it's 4K, all the bells and whistles, 60 frames. They can have, here's Assassin's Creed Shadows, 4K, 60 FPS, ray tracing. Here's a Star Wars Outlaws. Here's the new Dragon Age. Here's Call of Duty Black Ops 6. All the bells and whistles, 120 FPS, ray tracing. Like I don't feel like they really need. Astrobot, I can throw that in there, just for good measure. I don't know if they really need like, hey, a God of War or something. I mean, they can just partner with a bunch of third parties, have a little similar kind of style meeting as they did with PS4 Pro, and I think that will lure in a lot of people, to be honest.
What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, if you roll out that type of marketing, I think it would lure in people. But we also have to factor in, when you look at the PlayStation 4 Pro, it sold about 10% of the total of PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
So if the PlayStation 5 Pro comes out and it sells 10 million units lifetime, that's success. That's a successful product for Sony of this type.
Yeah.
So this doesn't have to come out and do huge numbers. It just has to cater to the audience that it is targeting. And as you two have expressed, you each have a high amount of interest in this particular product, whereas I don't. The PlayStation 5 Pro is not a product for me simply because I operate under the mind of, I have a PlayStation 5. I have a 4K OLED TV. The games look and play fine on it. I don't need to come out and spend another $500-$600 to play these exact same games slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be anything that revolutionizes the way that I'm interacting with the games. It's not going to add to that sense of immersion. Yes, it'll have more ray tracing based on the reports and rumors out there. That simply isn't enough for me to upgrade. Like, I could trade in my PS5, maybe get 50% off by going, to GameStop or whatever. But this product just doesn't appeal to me. Like, I never had a PlayStation 4 Pro. I never had an Xbox One X. I had my VCR, and I still have that VCR for Xbox One.
I'm sorry.
So Like, I'm just not one who really seeks out these mid-gen refreshes. But to you two, is the offerings based on all the reports out there, is it really enough for you to justify going out and buying this piece of hardware for what we're anticipating could launch north of $500 to $600? And feel free to give your own price predictions here as well.
I think it's going to be north of $500, probably closer to $600, maybe $599 is the sweet spot. Look, I've purchased the PS4 Pro when it came out, and I will say that it was an upgrade from what I previously had. Look, I think this is going to be the hardest sell for me to buy a PS5 Pro. I mean, there's a few reasons why I will get one. Number one is because I do make content, and there's obviously reasons, for my work to get new hardware. But look, at the end of the day, you're probably right. Is it really something that I actually need at this juncture? No, not really. But look, for me, I think if Sony has more powerful hardware available, not just Sony, any hardware maker, if they have more powerful hardware available, if the Switch Pro was a thing and that released, I would probably have gotten that. The Xbox One X, I picked that up when that came out. So I'm always wanting to get, whatever the hardware maker has available as kind of the premium product. But I think this is going to be a very interesting test for Sony to see how many people jump on board. Look, the PS4 Pro didn't sell a huge amount of numbers. I think a lot of people just, passed on it because same reasons why you said, Nate, there wasn't really a compelling reason to get one. But look, I think the PS5 Pro is going to be a good system for them, but it's going to take a little bit of time. I think GTA 6 is really the reason why people are going to get a PS5 Pro. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, like, first of all, I agree that in terms of price, I think this will be $599 minimum. When you take into account like how much more expensive chips and everything's gotten. I mean, but I'm a very simple person. Like, I'm cool with it as a concept. If there is a way to play the games that I've been playing and the games that are going to come out that I was going to buy in the first place, if there's a way to play those with improved ray tracing, higher resolution, whatever else, bells and whistles they have in there. And there's that, spectral, what was it? Super sampling, spectral resolution or something that they're talking about. And that's going to, really improve the image quality and stuff. If there's a way for me to enjoy the games I was going to buy in the first place, that way, I will buy it. It's just, I'm a very simple person. Yeah, it's not free, obviously, so I got to pay for it. But if I have disposable income, I will want to enjoy the games I play at the highest possible resolution, the best frame rates I can. Now, I have a pretty good PC, but I'm not a big PC gamer really, other than kind of playing some RTS games here and there. So again, like, if I have that disposable income, sure, I'll play Assassin's Creed and GTA 6 and Ghost of Tsushima with better image quality and likely better stable frame rates. I mean, that's as simple as I need to get for it to, for me to be sold on it. So, that's just me.
Yeah, like, I just find myself in that position of, if I have something, I mean, this goes for really anything, sneakers, any product I have, if it's still serving its purpose, I just have a hard time updating. I mean, I have yard sneakers that don't even have soles on them anymore because they're still fine for when I cut the grass and do yard work.
Right. What kind of
why am I going to buy new sneakers just to destroy them?
What kind of cell phone do you have right now? What do you want?
I have a Galaxy S5.
Jesus.
Oh yeah, you told me about that. Wow. Yep.
Yeah, everyone made fun of me. They're like, how does that even work?
No, you really mean it. Wow, you really mean it with that one.
See, I'm true to my word. I don't upgrade until I absolutely have to.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's any issue with if something works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
Yep.
if you're happy with what you got, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I had friends, last gen, they had PS4s, and like, I don't really care to play this, check your board 4K or whatever. But to me, I had a nice TV, and I was sitting, I just thought to myself, like, yeah, I want I want Uncharted 4 and God of War stuff and Red Dead 2 and stuff to look, as crisp as they can on my TV, and that was just me. I preferred that, and so some people will, some people won't. So
I think you bring up an interesting point because you mentioned the PS4 Pro. It looked better on your TV.
Yeah,
I think the difference between the PS5 Pro and the PS4 Pro was it was almost a necessity that Sony did release the PS4 Pro to kind of cater to people that were buying 4K TVs, because if you recall, that was kind of the year when 4K TVs were like less than $500, and people were like just buying up 4K displays, and they were plugging in their PS4s, their base PS4s, and their base Xboxes. And everything kind of just looked a little blurry, had a Vaseline-like effect to it because everything was running at like 720p or 900p internally, depending on the game. So there was, I guess, a market need to cater to people that did upgrade or did own 4K displays to have a better image quality. And I think this time around, I know that there is, rumors about 8K and all this sort of stuff. But like, for me, this is a harder sell for Sony to market the PS5 Pro, and get more people excited about. Look, like I said, I'm going to get one. Shinobi, I know you're going to get one. Nate, you're not going to get one. But I think what Sony has to really figure out is how they tap into a market of people that never really thought about upgrading, but how do we get them to upgrade to this new system? And again, I think the game is Grand Theft Auto. I think that's the one that's really going to make people say, look, I want GTA 6. I want to play it at the best possible resolution with the best possible frame rates, because this is my game of this generation. And this is the reason why I'm going to upgrade my hardware.
See, the interesting thing is you brought up the TVs, and I didn't get a 4K TV until 2021.
Wow.
So when a PS4 Pro was coming around, I had no sense of urgency to upgrade because it wouldn't have provided me with any benefit with my 1080p set. And I mean, it took me a while to really get the 4K set, even after getting a PS5 and an Xbox Series. I waited for the prices to come down on the LG models. I think I got mine for like $900. It was the LG C1, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. And I went with that model because a lot of people online were praising it. It had HDR, it had 120 support. I was like, okay, well, it has everything that this hardware is going to take advantage of. So this seems like a good, smart, long-term buy. Now, the 1080p set that I had up to that point, I bought when Sony introduced 3D PS3 games.
Wow.
So I had that set for about 10 years.
Wow.
And honestly,
I respect
if
it.
These current systems weren't 4K HDR, 120 support and such, I probably would still be using that TV.
Oh my gosh. You're the type that you're like, I'm going to drive my car until the wheels fall off.
That actually happened once.
I believe it.
I had my high school Ford Explorer, and I drove it until the rear wheel fell off the axle.
Wow.
And then I said, I think I need to buy a new car. So
I believe it. So maybe your PS5 will just catch smoke, catch fire one day, and be like, you know what? It's time for the Pro.
Then I'll look, I'd be like, well, I have to buy a new PS5. I could either get the slim one, which is the same as I had, or for an extra $200, I can get a PS5 Pro.
Yeah,
I guess I'll go with the Pro.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how I
think. I think ultimately though, like it's gonna. I don't think Sony is looking at the PS5 Pro as kind of this juggernaut, game changer that's gonna all of a sudden, it's gonna, persuade like a majority of the PS5 audience already there to kind of upgrade. I think it's just, they know that it's there's a niche audience there that they value that, I'm playing at 4K instead of 1800p, and or there's full on ray trace reflections and ray trace shadows in Assassin's Creed Shadows versus the regular PS5 version or whatever. Like there is an audience there that appreciates that. I'm one of them. I not that I wouldn't enjoy it, on my regular PS5 all the same. It's just if it is there and it looks better, that is all I need, and I will hop on board. I think there's probably an audience of a couple million so far. At least a few million out of the current PS5 install base that are probably approach it the same way. So I think as long as that's there, I mean, Sony will see value in it. So
yeah, it's definitely a piece of hardware that has potential and will sell to a enthusiastic, hardcore fan base, and maybe some of those individuals who have been playing on their PS4 up to this point of the generation.
Yeah, good point.
When they look to upgrade, they'll say, well, I may as well go with the best piece of hardware out there right now. I'll go right to a PlayStation 5 Pro versus going for a PlayStation 5. So there's definitely potential for it. And if it comes out this year before the holiday season, they'll move a couple of million units. And as games come out next year, you have to figure all of Sony's output next year will have PS5 Pro, a dev profile for it that will take advantage of the hardware. More third-party games will take advantage of the hardware in 2025. So it's just a matter of introducing it this year, building that little bit of an install base, and then let your games next year take full advantage of it. Let Grand Theft Auto 6 take advantage of it, and coast until next generation is ready.
Yeah, and that's also another feather in Sony's cap, because there's obviously third party games are coming out every month, and they're gonna have the advantage there and of showcasing to the people that if you want to play these third party games on console and that look the best and perform the best, that you can only find that here on the PS5 Pro. And it is an advantage. It is a benefit. So there is some value there where people will see a difference, and it could sway a lot, even further the third party, the piece of the third party pie that they get. So I mean, there's tangible benefit there as well.
Right. All third party games theoretically come to PlayStation 5 Pro. They could market it as the best version of this game.
Right. Exactly. So I mean, that's worth something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. From a marketing standpoint, and give Sony a little leverage, and they would strip away from Microsoft the motto or slogan, the most powerful piece of hardware
right
currently available. So it's definitely an interesting release when it comes out later this year, early next year. See what the pricing will be. We've given our thoughts and predictions on that. But go to the Streamlabs questions for this week. And our first comes from Juiced, donated $5, and they ask, Valve doesn't own a general license to distribute games on any platform. Even if Valve would come to Xbox, they would have to negotiate with every single publisher. No way Sony would say yes. Will only happen if it's just a PC, ergo expensive.
I agree.
Yeah. I don't know what the question is there, but I agree. I agree that that seems to make the most sense of how Microsoft at least would approach next gen. It would be very PC like instead of kind of like its own closed off platform. So I agree, I guess.
Yeah, I guess the question would kind of be, or the statement is, if Xbox did make a deal with Steam, would they gain access to the Sony games, or would Steam have to negotiate with every single third-party publisher for their games to go to the Xbox version?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know how Sony would stop that, but I'm sure they would try.
Right, you definitely would imagine it, because if Xbox could come out and say, we have Steam, you could play Sony games on our platform, you can play our games and every third-party game.
Yeah.
We're the ultimate system now. Be like,
that circumvents everything. Yeah, Sony, I'm sure Sony, if this is the case and what's going to happen, I'm sure they've already caught wind of it and probably doing something about it. And maybe.
Yeah. Definitely having some sort of conversation with Gabe Newell about it.
Yeah.
Then had a $1 donation from Jackie G. Favorite game soundtrack from recently?
From recently? Oh, I'm going to throw this out there, and you guys think I'm going to be crazy, but I really, really like the Ace Combat 7 soundtrack. It's an absolute banger.
I haven't heard that one yet.
It's really good.
For me, I would probably say because it's what I'm playing now, and it's really good. Stellar Blade. I think it has a fantastic soundtrack. It's obviously it's a Korean studio, but all the tracks are just beautiful. Some are epic, some are just the voiceover, like the lady that sings them. I mean, it's a beautiful voice. It really just kind of sets you in that world in a weird way, in a world of robots and nasty monsters and stuff. But I don't know, it kind of works when you're running around as Eve and stuff. So I'm really loving that one.
I think I'm going to go with Hi-Fi Rush.
Oh,
Good
yeah,
pick.
good one.
It's a good pick.
That's a really strong soundtrack, original songs, and I mean, some of them are just straight up bangers. It's just fantastic compositions found in that game.
Yeah, it really puts you in the mood when you're playing a game. Like it fits so well with what's happening on screen.
Yeah, like when you're hitting perfect and you're matching that rhythm and the pacing, it just flows so. It's perfect. It's just magical to be that metronome and landing attacks to it.
Fully agreed.
And our final donation and question comes from the Zelda Sensei, who donated $100, and this episode is dedicated to the Zelda Sensei. And they write, "Thanks for all the thoughtful insight and content. Here's to 25K subscribers and to the next 25K after." Thank you, Zelda Sensei. Hopefully we do get to 25,000 subscribers in the coming weeks so we can do some game giveaways and a live stream towards the end of August if the goal is achieved by the end of August. But that was our final Streamlabs donation for this week. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a Streamlabs link in the description below. Donate any dollar amount, ask a question. We will answer it at the end of the episode. Donate $100 or more, and we'll dedicate the episode to you. And I'd like to thank Shinobi for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was my pleasure. Thank you both for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation. I don't often talk to people in real life about games, so my wife's not a gamer. No one really in my family is. So this was very fun and very thoughtful of you to think and have me on, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Definitely had a great conversation with you. And I'd like to thank MVG for joining me as always.
Thanks for having me on, Nate. It was great to have Shinobi on. Good conversation all around. And yeah, let's see what PlayStation's got for us with the remainder of this year. I think there's going to be some good stuff coming.
Yeah. Let us know your thoughts on the PlayStation 5's first party output, PlayStation 5 Pro, everything that we talked about in the comments section below. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And until next time, continue to embrace the hate.